You'll set that up. All right, go for it.
One second here.
No worries.
Hello and welcome to Movie Buffs, a show that covers the best action films of all time. I'm your host, Cisco, aka Misfit Minded. You can find me on Twitter at rampage_misfit and at my movie pages at misfit_minded on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And I'm your host, Shani B, and you can find me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
Nice. And today we're talking about the 2013 film World War Z starring Brad Pitt. If you haven't seen it, it's about a retired UN investigator whose expertise is required to find the origins and hopefully the cure for a worldwide zombie outbreak. Shani B, are you a fan of this movie? What do you love? What do you hate?
I love this movie. I'm a huge fan of it. I'd been wanting to rewatch it for a while. I just had a vibe that I was like, something about this movie is calling me back, and I love it still. The tension, the something about how I don't really love zombie movies, but this one finds a way to keep me engaged or finds a way to make me feel like it's a little bit more grounded or something. I
Hmm.
don't know. It's interesting because I don't usually like zombie movies, but I really like it. Like everything comes out of nowhere in a way that should be predictable but doesn't feel like it to me. BP stays so calm. It's just a little bit different. It has all the things you want in a zombie movie, but there's something different about it that really sticks with me. And I love how they bowl over each other like it's in a big old wave. It's just, there's so many things that are unique about this. So I love it. What about you?
Nice.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think I will. First of all, I think that's crazy that you just had like a feeling or something like that because today is the 10-year anniversary of World War Z. So like
That's
the
right.
the timing couldn't have been more like better. I thought you did that
That's
on purpose, to be honest, but
I knew
yeah,
it was coming up, I just didn't remember when it was, so I
yeah,
that's amazing. Okay,
10
yes,
years ago today.
yes.
I kind of like this movie.
Interesting.
I have some caveats which we'll get into, but I don't know. Personally, I'm an old school zombie fan, and so in that vein, I just think there's like so many examples of zombie movies that do this and do it better, are actually R-rated, have that gore that you expect from zombie movies. This is PG-13. So just to name off a few, I mean, I'm wearing my Walking Dead shirt. I guess the first couple seasons of Walking Dead, I would put up there. 28 Days Later,
Yes.
Train to Busan. They all do this kind of like fast zombie thing. I just think a little bit better, honestly.
Mm,
I will agree with you that I think the groundedness and the realism of this movie in particular still hold up. Um, and like as a big budget, blockbuster zombie action movie, um, that tried to capitalize on The Walking Dead and how popular zombies were.
yep,
They did a pretty decent job of that, especially when you consider just how troubled the production was, which we'll
right.
get into a little bit here. Um, but yeah, I'm with you. I think the zombies, the imagery of the zombies like flinging their bodies around like they're being controlled by someone else is definitely what stands out. But The Last of Us too, that's another. I think I've talked about that before on here. That's another
Oh, yeah,
example of like they do something very similar, but I just think the storytelling is just a lot more solid.
for sure.
And but I do love the setting of like a post-apocalypse, and zombie movies usually allow for that. So I do dig on that. And Brad Pitt, of course, being in a horror movie, which I wish he would do more of. I think that's like one spot of his impeccable resume of movies. I'm a huge Brad Pitt fan, but I just think
Yes,
like outside of this and like Seven, maybe it's lacking. It's
let's
lacking a
try.
little bit in the horror
Yes.
category. So
Very
Yeah.
true.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that is the critique I have of this movie too, is that like the way the story is told and the storytelling pieces, they leave a lot to be desired. Like I think you can tell that this movie was strangely put together and pieced together in many ways. And honestly, I think the things I like about it have more to do with like why I would watch a zombie story than they do with like actually executing this type of thing the way that true fans want to see it. Like I mostly like this movie because it's about a guy who's looking to cure this virus, and that is where the focus stays, even though that does mean little effects, little gore, little, I guess, exposition or something. Because the exposition in this film is so interesting. It really does
Mhm.
feel like it's always only very directly related to like where to next.
Yeah, no, it does make sense that like you like this one more than me, but you're not that much of a zombie fan because like
Exactly.
that checks out because this isn't your typical zombie movie. I just thought of another one, Zombieland 1 and 2. I love those
Oh,
movies. Have to
the
shout those out.
yes. 1000, 1000.
We should do that on the show because
Yes.
those are action packed zombie movies
Yes.
too. So
Yes.
but yeah, see, I just the more I think about it, the more I'm gonna be coming up with like different examples of like it is a very iconic like horror trope or like horror
I mean, it's a genre that makes
genre.
so
Yeah, there you
much
go.
sense. People are so good at figuring out how to reinvent a zombie movie, and I think that's another reason why I like this movie, but I understand that this movie is not that powerful because the most it reinvented was like, oh, what if zombies just moved around like they were a virus so they would bowl over each other? And like
Hmm.
that's cool, but that's not quite enough. Not certainly not when we have such prestige zombie content
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah, I mean the Last of Us, it's reached prestige TV now with HBO,
Yes.
so it's definitely come like full circle.
Mhm.
And then even Walking Dead, I know there's like a spin-off going on right now. So it has even though the original show is over,
Mhm.
the Walking Dead brand is still churning out.
There's
Uh,
something to that too, that like even how zombie movies started is they come from this place of like there's something wrong with these people and we don't know why they're behaving like they're behaving, but it was more of like a social commentary experiment. And
yeah.
this movie is so biologically focused. I think I also like that too, where like they do the countdown to figure out how long it takes a person to turn. And I feel
Mhm.
like that kind of fun stuff, sometimes zombie movies are so fast and so intense that they don't have time for some of the practical stuff that like a viewer like me feels really grounded and like I can hang on to this ride if you give me some of those things. You know what I mean?
Yes. So to get into our questions and plot hole section here, I didn't have that down, but you just made me remember that when I was watching it last night, the count I was a little maybe you can fill it in because I was a little confused. So I know like that's one of the things I do like is that everything is from Brad Pitt's POV,
Hell
his
yeah.
character, and so like it'll show some action, but then it'll cut to Brad Pitt reacting to the action.
Watching.
So we get to see him like processing it, which I think was very effective. And
Yes.
so when he first sees someone get bitten and then he counts down like how long it takes for them to turn, I get that. But then when they meet, he first meets the army guys and he's like kind of investigating. Don't they say like um some of the guys turned it took like 10 minutes or something like that, like one of the guys
Yes.
says that. So he really relied on that counting technique throughout the whole film, and I was like, well, the guy said that the turning was different for some people, so I don't know, I guess I was confused. Do they explain that?
Well, I think I just made sense of it for myself because I don't know that they really thoroughly explained exactly what they meant. I think I was looking at it from that pathological space of
Hmm.
like the initial virus affects people a certain way and then it starts mutating.
Ah,
And
okay.
I feel like I thought he was trying to decide, okay, by the time it got to New York, within 10 seconds or 12 seconds or whatever, it's happening. But when I
Hmm.
go to the origin, it took a lot longer to actually turn these people, and it didn't turn this one guy. So I feel like it was kind of cool how it feels a lot like a video game to me, but like
Oh
a
yeah.
little bit of a boring one where every
Yeah.
level has another piece of information for you, but it's not that scary in each of these places. It is a little bit more nerdy.
No, I was reading some of the criticism, like the reviews of the time,
Hmm.
of this movie, and that was definitely a criticism that a lot of the critics had of like it's just there's no characterization, there's no you don't know anything about this guy other than he cooks pancakes for his family.
Yeah, and
Other
that
than
he
that,
worked with the UN
yeah.
somehow, like, was in Fallujah. They, like, use words that I'm like,
He's
"I
like
don't
a
remember these
legend. He's like a
words."
legendary UN worker. Like you just go with it
Yeah,
that like yeah, Brad Pitt is that guy
pretty
at the
much.
UN pretty much. But that makes sense though. I do like that. If they would have just said that, I would have bought it. If they would have just said like it's progressed or something, I'd have been like, okay, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
it just kind of threw me because I was like, okay, I like this, you know, countdown thing that he has. That makes sense to me.
Mhm.
But then that line, I kind of just had it in the back of my head, and I was kind of like wrestling with it.
Especially
But
especially because he talks about how, like, as an investigator, he was investigating war crimes. So that doesn't mean he was, like, any kind of biological detective the way
right.
that, like, Kate, Winslet's character was in Contagion.
Oh,
You know, like,
another similar type movie that I love. I love
so
Contagion.
fucking good, dude.
Yeah.
Contagion is really good.
Yep.
But yeah, you know, it's sort of like they had to fudge kind of details. And that brings me back to wondering about how it was cut and put together. Because to your point, people said that it was a weird production and that they like had to do a whole bunch of heavy lifting to
Reshoots.
make it work. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have to imagine that's gotta have something to do with like how very weirdly it's paper mache together.
I think so. And like I get like that was kind of the reception at the time too was like it's a miracle that this is even like a coherent movie at all for how much they had to like cut and paste and like add to it.
Yep.
Like I think the whole conclusion at the Who Center, like getting
Yeah.
I think that was all reshot or something. Like I want to say so, and that's like a huge
I'm
set piece.
glad.
Like yeah,
Good.
so but yeah, I think to just get all the rest of my plot holes questions out of the way,
Same.
the family part definitely could have been snipped out of there. Like I just they didn't do anything. The wife is just
Yeah.
like waiting by the phone the whole time,
It was
almost
a
gets them killed by
Ye
calling.
well, it was so yeah, it was so weird. I was like, "Are you guys trying to say something about how, like, if something like this happens, people's families are only safe if they're useful? Because if you are,
Right.
then, like, follow through with that."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I sort
And
of
we don't
get
see
that.
any other family either. Like with say if they met other people and they kind of had, you know, it
Mhm.
shows their life living there or something. Like they're just there was nothing other than again, his daughter has asthma. That was like the
Yeah.
one
They're
other
tr
thing. Like so
It's true. They were, like, trying to figure out how to run, I guess, like, how to raise stakes, and that is what makes it pretty friggin' awkward when he is at the WHO at the end, and he's like, "Listen, do you have a family? Because I'm trying to get back to my family."
yeah.
And I was like, "Whoa, BP, like, don't forget a lot of people probably had families, dude. What are you
yeah.
doing?" Um,
And the guy says that. Like,
yes.
yeah, I did have a family, but they were killed.
Dude, how could he be so smart about so many things and totally miss that one? Not great.
Yeah.
Not great. But I agree. Like the family stuff made no sense really because we didn't need it to raise the stakes. Like there's a good enough tension in what BP's doing, like with his eyes and performance. We're good on this trope that makes no sense and doesn't really come into account.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I like the fact that you know, if it would have just been like, "We need you," or whatever, but it was up to him whether or not, like, he went, and he still went, I would have been like, "Okay, I call bullshit," because like, any other guy would
Mm,
be like, "I have a family," but then the fact that they were like, "Well, if you don't, your family's getting kicked out of Sanctuary," I was like, "Okay, so that makes a lot more sense than like, you know, you see in sometimes in these movies where it's like, Daddy's
yeah,
gotta go
just
back to war," because I mean, even with what was the Covenant when we said with Jake Gyllenhaal's like, well, I just got out of this crazy life situation. Let me go back to that.
I gotta do it.
And we were both like, what? Like, so
Seriously.
yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think that is exactly it, is that finding a way to make the stakes matter in this story is really weird just because I'm not sure what the original stakes might have been. I'm not sure what the intended stakes might have been.
Right.
I just feel like in the end it does sort of look like the family stuff is purely to be like, that's right, people do stuff for their families. When it could have just been like, this guy is just thinks it's important to try to stop this. He doesn't need a
Mhm.
family to care about the human race, you know?
Yeah. And my two last ones, this one's like what I'm kind of more forgiving of because so many movies do this of like the plane crash bit and how Brad Pitt only gets like one little thing in his gut. Like, and it's just like, dude, you guys completely wiped out. It wasn't like you fell in an open field and you
No.
landed like straight upright. Like it was like you burned out, crashed out, and he was like one of the only and the girl that he meet, the soldier,
Yeah,
they somehow
thrown but
both
somehow
survived.
alive. Yeah.
And then I think this is the biggest one, honestly, because I still kind of want to see this version of World War Z if they ever redo, they hit the reset button. The
Mhm.
only thing I know about the original book, and like I think I have some friends that say it's not worth checking out or whatever.
Amazing.
But the only thing I know about it, and this kind of like I was like, well, that sounds kind of interesting, is that it's like a what do you call it? It's like it's told from multiple points of view, and it's basically
Oh,
like a not a found footage, but like like interviewing different people around the globe dealing with the crisis or whatever. And I was like,
wow.
that would have been so interesting, like to do instead of like, no offense to Brad Pitt, but like going to different camps, survival camps, or and then somehow like trying to tie them together, like with maybe maybe the main character in the book is like a Brad Pitt character going to these different locations and like
Okay.
journaling and taking notes. So, something like that.
Yeah.
So I still want to see that version. I thought that would have added a little more characterization, like some goals for him to accomplish other than just like the vaccine, which is like, a
Yeah.
worthy goal, especially after COVID. Like,
Yes. Right,
it felt
exactly.
very real, him trying to look for that. But I don't know. I just thought, like I said, I haven't read the book, but like that always sounded interesting to me that like
If it
that's
could
the way
be.
it's told. And I don't think
Mhm.
we've gotten like a zombie flick that does that. So,
Well, certainly not in the way that we've been able to do in some of the TV, and I think that is why we
right,
want it
right.
in the movies because we know it's possible, we know it can be good. And yeah, this movie I think had to choose, and I don't know why it chose what it chose because I don't know what was going on in the background, but I feel
Brad
like
Pitt is also a producer on this too, which I think we should name. So I know that there was some rumors that him and the director weren't getting along very well. So that also could have
oh,
played a part in like
okay.
what Brad Pitt wanted to do versus what was written for him. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That could be something.
All right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Before we get into the writers and directors, the last thing I will say about
Yeah.
this is I kind of wish there was a little bit more luring and like trapping and diversions used because it does kind of feel like somehow BP can go really slow and watch a lot of things and still outrun these guys when they're moving the way they're moving. And so I sort of wish that like just the way that he opened the soda machine at the very end to like make the noise and then walk through the zombies, I wish that he was doing stuff like that the rest of the time. I feel like when movies do stuff like that, it's another way that it makes me feel like somebody could win. And in most zombie movies, like the chance anyone's winning is like basically zero the second it starts. So I like that shit, and I want more of that shit.
That's the double-edged sword though with fast zombies, which like I guess I'm more of a slow zombie guy, honestly, because it's like I buy that we have more of a chance in that scenario.
Totally.
The fast zombie thing, every time I watch a fast zombie movie, the Dawn of the Dead remake, I'm just
Yes.
like, we would be so fucked. Like
That's why
there's
we need traps. I need to be
yeah,
luring these fools into a quarry of fire, and I
especially
think that'd be fun.
and they use that in like Train to Busan. They're stuck on this train and they have to deal with it. Dawn of the Dead remake, they're stuck in this mall, but then they use that as like kind of their fortification. Like so, it allows for like different types of stories to be told in the zombie like lore. But yeah, I'm with you. Where it's like I'm just like Brad Pitt's just standing there watching, and I'm like, where's the zombies at? Like he's just
Yeah.
standing there. He's not running. He's just
No, no. Especially because when they need the zombies to be trademark zombies, they do come through in those moments. So yeah,
Mhm.
let's talk about the writers and
Yeah.
the director because I had no idea how many people, like how many important people worked on this movie with like, Matthew Michael Carnahan and
Mhm.
Drew Goddard and Lindelof. Like
Yeah.
I can't believe that all these fools were here. I also looking at their IMDb, I was like, wow, these guys have done a lot of shit. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of amazing because with the resume these dudes are packing, I'm surprised again that we're looking at what we're looking at in the final product. Not that it worked out, right? But that we're looking at it this way.
And I think the amount I want to say even more writers worked on this, and they only got the credit for 3,
For
but
sure.
it was part of that was because of the reshoots and the rewrites. That like
Right.
I think I saw Lindelof was brought in to kind of rewrite that 3rd act,
Okay.
maybe,
Mhm.
because I know they had a much more big budget humans versus zombies like battle thing like in Russia or something like that, and
Oh, okay.
they just were like, this is not believable. Like we need something a lot more grounded, and like so that's what we got. You got the WHO kind of like maze type thing, which I do actually really like. That might be my favorite zombie stuff in the whole thing because again, they're
Mhm.
slower, it's like more tense, like that type of thing. So
It's a
yeah,
natural resting point as well, right? Like they have been on this journey collecting all these pieces of information and evidence to lead them to this place. So it makes sense they would do it here in this way. And that because we're in a zombie movie, we can't just like make everything go right back to normal. We just need to like leave with hope. And I
yeah.
feel like this does succeed in doing that. And I guess like maybe seeing this group does explain why sometimes it feels like we're watching 3 different people's movies.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Mark Forster directed it, and the only like some of the only action stuff you can see on there is he did Quantum of Solace, which not one of the best Bonds to be honest. So
It's okay. There's some stuff in it. It's
yeah,
okay, but it's true,
uh,
like, he there's the
he's not
his
who I think of when
resume.
I think of action directors though, like our horror directors. Is what I'm saying. Like
I guess, like, that's an interesting part of this too, because when I was looking him up and I was like, "Whoa, Monsters Ball? Wait a
right.
minute, wait a minute." That did make me think like, "Oh, that's probably why Brad Pitt is doing lots of drama eyes throughout
Hmm.
this." Like, he is
And what drew him
doing.
to do it, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe that's why it's attempting to be so grounded and needed to keep the family stuff in there at all because he was like looking for maybe Forrester was like trying to make the first epic dramatic zombie picture, you
Yeah,
know? And
exactly.
BP was like, "Dude, we got to
We're
just
gonna
make
win
it
an
this
Oscar for
way."
this, like, but
For
yeah,
real.
staying on the filmmaking stuff, like, what, filmmaking flourishes stood out to you, I guess, if any?
I mean, what I always think of when I return to or when I remember this movie is all the reds. When they use the red stuff with the
Mm,
flare at the top, I just love how the color is something that can help remind me that like this is dystopian. Because I feel
mhm,
like BP does get to be in a lot of places that seem like they're still kind of operating the way they would with or without it. And so I do like the very harsh change that shows you like no, it's all going down out here. It's bright red. It's bright red.
mhm,
So I love that for sure. And then I guess just like how each of the sequences raise the stakes,
mhm,
like that initial situation when they're at the grocery store
yeah,
is very interesting and how it's sort of
mhm,
like, okay, yeah, they're looting. Everyone's in here. Everyone's in here. Oh no, someone's missing. Oh no. Like, you know what I mean? Like it
yeah.
progresses even in that scene. And then with each sequence after, like, Jerusalem, the crash, all of that stuff. I feel like it's hard to pick, but I like how the filmmaking really seems like it's kind of slowly choking you as it goes. And I guess I guess like that is there, but it's also like not super powerful. I'm definitely giving it more space.
Yeah, I like what you said about, like, you get to see, like, because we start off before the outbreak, and you're with them pretty much the entire time, like, it's a kind of a real time-ish, movie, so you see, yeah, the looting, and I do like that moment, and I have to shout out that moment in the grocery store where he, shoots the guy in self-defense, and then the cop is, like, running when he thinks towards him and he puts his hands up like I'm under arrest and the cops just looting too.
Yeah, yeah, it's
That's
like,
a
"Man,
great moment.
we have no
Yeah,
time for this guy. Sorry, but
yeah.
you had to do what you had to do. Me too."
And then yeah, the guy that helps them find the prescriptions too, who like you think that he's gonna,
Do
shoot
something
Brad
messed
Pitt.
up.
Yeah. So just all that confusion and stuff like that, I think they did a nice job. And again, a lot of this stuff I think is even more effective because of COVID and the toilet paper shortage and the with the water shortage and all that
For
stuff
real.
that is like so it still feels fresh, I guess. And like, I watched Contagion too, like when the pandemic first started, and it's just like, man, they really kind of nail down a lot of what humans would do in this
Yes.
scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's kind of cool about, I guess, like, that's what's cool about having movies like this and then having had our own real life experience with the pandemic is that, like,
Mhm.
maybe we would have saw those movies and thought like, hey, that's extreme, but then
Yeah,
we were
that's
like,
not
no, I
that's
am
not
in
gonna
line.
happen.
Yeah, yeah, I am in line, and they are telling me that there is a limit on how much toilet paper I can
We
get
can
right now.
buy, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was gnarly watching it, but I feel like the reason why I was in the mood is because I was like, I think I'm finally ready to revisit a world like this,
Oh, yeah, I'm a
knowing it's not
sicko,
the
like,
truth.
I do not
Yes.
recommend watching Contagion
No,
in the
not
middle of a
yet.
pandemic, like, that was definitely, like, a weirdo move on my part, but, hey,
No.
I kind of was like, "Well, let me see what I can learn from this movie, if there's any secrets," you know what I mean? Like, I had the itch, I'm like, "If there's any time to watch that movie," like
Yeah, you wanted to just get in the zone,
and they
and
did
I
predict, like, coming from like an Asian country and then bring it and then this one's the same thing. This was from a Taiwanese. I think there's like some confusion in this one a little bit more. But the
yeah.
first place they do say that brought the disease was Taiwan. So I was like,
Yeah.
man, like that's wow.
It is
It's pretty
interesting. I'm
close.
sort of like, wow, what is in the water over there where there's an amazing emerging life happening? It's exciting. But yeah, I feel like that is part of it is the idea of like where all this comes from, and that is always gonna stick with me. But I know Soderbergh did like mad
Oh
research
yeah.
to make sure
Mhm.
that was like as true to life as possible. And so I think that's why I that's the one I think of in tandem with this, where like I
Mhm.
like this movie, but like Contagion is the best one that does
Oh,
the
for sure.
scientific approach, you know?
I also was thinking of I Am Legend, which is like another one I really like, where it's
Yeah.
you get solo POV Will Smith by himself trying to survive the apocalypse, basically. So
I
that's like a whole other
also
aspect to it. But they are like zombies, and they're fast,
yes.
sort of zombies too. Even though like I'm not sure if they call them zombies in the source material or in the movie or whatever. But I mean,
Yeah, I feel
they
like
are.
yeah, they're definitely zombies because they're like the undead or whatever. I feel like
Yeah.
they kind of treat them more like vampires. But
Right. Right.
I
Right.
like
Right.
how I Am Legend is basically about how we would create them with like a vaccine. We're trying to cure cancer
Hmm.
and we end up making vampires. And I
Yeah.
kind of like that about Resident Evil, I like that about I Am
Yeah.
Legend, I like that about Planet of the Apes. I
Mm.
like when we're looking for worst case
You go too
scenarios
far.
in real life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like, and
exactly.
that's real too because of the AI stuff. Even the guy who made AI quit and was like, "Well, I didn't know it was gonna go this far." It's like, "Fuck you, man."
Yes,
You should have
yes,
known. You should have.
that's
All these
right.
movies say AI is the bad guy. You know what I mean? Like, come on now,
Mhm.
Terminator.
Yeah, John
But
Connor came back once. His name is James Cameron, and he tried to tell you guys what was up.
right.
No.
Um.
Yeah, I feel like this is an interesting one where the filmmaking I don't know that it needs to work with storytelling outside of that momentum. Like I feel
Mhm.
like when the action sequences, and I guess I'll totally use air quotes because it's not like they're huge or sweeping, but
Right.
when they come, there is pace. It only really
Mhm.
feels kind of like it dips when we're waiting for another sequence, you know?
Yeah, and that's where it feels like a video game in a way, where it's like those would be like the cutscenes or whatever, and then everything else is like you trying to walk to the next destination or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
like, "What's in this box?"
yeah,
Like, for
um,
sure.
yeah. For the filmmaking stuff, I just had like the Jerusalem siege, which we haven't talked about yet. Like, I feel like out of everything this movie gave us, like that's the most iconic image that I think about when I think of this movie is like them all climbing on top of each other to like get over the wall. And it's just like in that way, we haven't really seen zombie movies do that to that extent. And that's only possible because of digital effects
Yep.
And that we're even able to make stuff on that scale, on a global scale. So not all the digital effects like hold up
Hmm.
necessarily, but like that's like one scene where it's like, holy shit, like what? Again, I feel like we would not stand a chance in hell to
No,
survive
it's
that.
it's
So
such a good it's such an
yeah.
important part of the movie too, in terms of like where it exists, because at the top of this movie it's like we do the standard zombie thing happening, but Brad Pitt and his family escape, they're safe, and that's
Yeah.
usually a whole entire movie. So
Hmm.
this time around what's kind of awesome is they have to do it again in these other ways, and it's a real turning point in the story when he's just like, I'm this investigator trying to solve zombies, and then it's like, oh shit, I don't know that you solving zombies is like even in the cards anymore, because look at Jerusalem. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's kind of nice how that works with the story. But like again, I think the filmmaking just like made that happen. And the editor was like, ooh, ooh, and made that happen too.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm glad they didn't make like Brad Pitt like a scientist or something like that, because he just does not play like he definitely reads as a Brad. Like that's the perfect name. And
Yes.
but like yeah, like an investigator, like I can kind of buy that. Like, like I was kind of getting some Seven vibes,
Yeah.
as he's
Yeah.
like asking questions and kind of like interrogating,
Yeah.
trying to find out like what's going
Listening,
on. Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah,
I
so
love it.
and as far as performances, I think, Brad, very solid action star lead. And again, like stuff that I wish he would do more horror, but I get like, he's probably at a stage of his life where it's like, I don't have to do
Yeah, yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's just gotta be good if he's gonna say yes to it, and I think maybe this movie, it was, like, the big teacher of that, because Seven is so, so good, and he
Hmm.
does a great job in this, but it's true, I don't know that, like, he necessarily is interested in finding the deeper level. But I will say, James Badgedale being here as a soldier was a
Hmm.
great reminder. I forgot he's here, his little
Yeah.
cameo. I love when he plays this type of guy, just like a person who's like, this is so serious. And I know it's the end of the world, but like, here's a joke, you guys, because what else are we going to do?
Yeah, and then we got a comment here too. I don't know if we can
Oh,
show this here.
snap. Let me
Let's
go
see.
find it.
World War
Yes.
Z was great. Thank you. Thank you for the comment, Villa
Yes.
Bees. Yeah, we've been talking about it for like the last 30 minutes, and yeah, we're breaking down some of our favorite scenes in here. Yeah, James Badgedale, I forgot he was in here too, and I do like that sequence, especially like when you pretty much know as soon as he gives Brad Pitt the ring and he's like, tell my wife I love her. And I'm like, oh, this guy's fucked. Like every
I kind of
time.
like, yeah, I kind of like that, where like that's something you know about Badgedale if he shows up.
Yeah, but I do like the way like it plays out where like he gets bit and he like processes it for a moment. And he's like, I'm a goddamn Zeke, and then they're like, just
And yeah,
give
they're
us
like,
the
mm-hmm.
the word or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. That just kind of made me laugh because we used to in my friends, we used to call like everything Zeke at one point for no reason. I don't know. We just thought it was a funny word.
I'll
So
take it.
every time I hear Zeke now, I just start cracking up. So when he says, I'm a goddamn Zeke, I was like, oh man.
It's so good. Yeah, it's like him and then David Morse being there as well.
Yes, that was the other one
So
I was gonna shout
good.
out with like no teeth. That was like creepy as hell, dude. I was like, oh man.
He's the best. I love David Morris. He is so
Yeah.
good at that, at being like, am I a sociopath psycho, or am I just like a really soft guy that presents hard because I want you to be nice to me. Like
Yeah.
there's something so amazing in all of his performances, and him showing up here is also a great reminder.
And they brought up a thing that I never really thought about, but when he was talking about like pulling out the teeth and like that's how they stop the infection. And I was like, man, I guess in a way, like, I don't know,
Could
it's
that work?
I know exactly. It's like, but because okay, 28 days later, for example, one eye drop, one blood drop in the
Yes,
eye turns you into a like infected. But then
that's right.
in this one, Brad Pitt gets some in his like I think in his mouth or whatever, and is still fine.
Right.
So you're assuming that it's just the bite is how it transfers or whatever. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that
All
might
zombie
be a
movies have different like kind of lore in that respect too. So
Totally. I think that could be a plot hole though. Like as you pointed out, I'm sort of like, how does that work? If this is a
I
biological
know, I know.
contagion,
Yeah. It's like,
that's okay.
and I kind of like wish they showed like some footage of that, just like this city of people with no teeth. It would have been creepy as hell.
Yeah, it would be amazing. I mean, when he said
Uh,
it and they were like, and he had no teeth, I was like, shit, dude, how could they, how a whole country of people in 20, that was like a gnarly reminder that like you're saying, they're trying to find a way to maybe work in all the weird perspectives that the book was trying to cover that it probably had more time
cut.
to.
Yeah,
And like,
cut.
even though you know me, I love a movie, maybe this source material would have been better as a show and like should have
Mm,
been developed as such. But The Walking Dead was the standard. So it's not like you're just going to try to come and compete with that, you know?
exactly. Yeah, I know. I think I was reading something where the author said that the only thing that really transferred over from the book, in his opinion, was just like the main through line of the main character, and not any of the not any of like the side
Oh,
stories.
man.
So,
You can't
uh,
be
oh,
precious about your
I know.
art in entertainment
I mean,
because
this movie
they're
made a
going to
lot of
change
money.
it.
I mean, he's probably not complaining from the check that he got from it. So,
No,
uh,
just existentially, I'm sure.
yeah. But yeah, let's put these together here because I know we're running short on time.
Yes.
Which stunt and kill was your favorite from this one?
I mean, I think the doctor slipping and falling is
Oh
the
man,
best kill of this movie. Like,
that was so
oh,
random. That was just so random. I was
it's
like,
so
oh
good.
my
It's so good because I guess it's kind of like a reminder that this movie is
anything can
idealistic,
happen. Yeah.
right? It's idealistic in the sense that like they've set out to find this thing, but it's idealistic in the sense that like a dude like this could
Mhm.
really survive this stuff. And
Yeah,
so it's kind of comedic,
I
but
was
it's
kind of
good.
shocked they gave him a gun. I was like, this is the scientist guy, like the lab guy.
Ugh,
Why is I mean, I guess to protect yourself, but I mean,
but
even
still,
Brad Pitt said something like, what he's like, get your hand off the trigger or whatever, like
he was not
because
ready.
because he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. So I don't know. That was kind of hard to
Yeah.
believe.
Because the other kills are kind of like the kills you'd expect here, but that's pretty
Mhm.
funny. And I think I really like the stuff on the bikes. So for me,
Oh
this
yeah.
the little simple stunt of like these zombies flying out of nowhere and tackling dudes off bikes did kind of also make me giggle. There's it's kind of something funny about how like the stunts in that scene in particular are funnier than they are scary, but I'm okay
Mhm.
with it. I'm into it.
And so the bikes are weird too. Was that just so they could get to the plane faster? That's
I
is that
I think it was so they could get there faster quietly. But I was
the
like,
okay, so the
"We're
quiet
doing
part
this
is where
please."
yeah, the quiet part is where I kind of brushed up on, where I was like, "Is that really quieter than walking to the plane?" Like,
Yeah.
I feel like if anything, that's a little bit louder because yeah, you heard the squeak of the the wheels.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure of any of the reasoning behind it,
And
but
where do they get the
when
bikes from anyway, too? That's another thing. Like, they just have all these
yes.
bikes flying around? I don't know.
Dude, I guess a lot of people just totally dropped dead right at their bikes, and so they must have
Yeah.
gone around scooping bikes. What about you? What stunts or, like, kills really stood out to you?
Stunts, I would say the plane crash, just because this is like I hate flying, like just the whole process of it.
Oh, yeah?
Not as like I'm scared of flying. It's just like, like I just feel like people like
It's annoying.
etiquette wise, it's annoying. Yeah. And so it's like being on a plane with zombies is a fucking nightmare. Like that just seems like such a nightmare to me. You're stuck on this tube
Yes.
basically with all these people,
No fresh
um,
air.
no fresh air, and there's nowhere to go. Like there's nowhere to go if to escape or like I have like long legs, so like my knees always hurt like like it's just
Yep,
yeah.
it's no good.
That in particular, the way that played out, there's confusion there, and then like him finally pulling the pin on the grenade and just being like, "All right, well, I hope this works,"
It's
and then
for
just
real.
just the whole plane crash or whatever. So, I mean, this isn't the first movie where we've seen surviving a plane crash. Like we did The Gray is another example of
So good.
them surviving a plane crash in the snow. So it's action movie. It happens in action movies uh quite a bit. So not that much of a stretch, but yeah, zombies on a plane. I'm like, that could be a whole movie,
That's
instead of
true.
snakes on a plane or something. Or
Yes, that should be the sequel, right?
right.
It's true. Yeah, like
And then
that.
wasn't
I like
Gerard Butler? Wasn't that his new plane? Wasn't that a new movie that he
hell
did?
yeah,
Yeah,
I saw it. It was
yeah.
amazing.
I
Yes,
still have
he
to see that one.
too crashed a plane with total grace. It really
Yeah,
was good.
Air
But yeah,
Force
for
One,
sure.
another
Oh,
action
Air
one.
Force One, stellar. Yeah, yeah. A plane has a place in an action movie,
Yes.
and I do think like there being a crash here was fun, but it's true. It's like it's a hard line to walk because it is pretty unrealistic at the same time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and then he's buckled in. I do like though that when they are on the ground and it's like he's kind of trying to orient himself, and there's still the zombie strapped in, like the lady that's strapped in, but she's a zombie now. I
Yes.
thought that was a pretty funny
Yeah, she's
touch.
the only other one that made it. Only lady
Yeah.
with her seatbelt on.
And then for the kills, I don't know. Like again, I feel like this movie lacks the kill department because zombie movies always have these creative. It's not just headshots every time because that would get old. So like Zombieland, for example, they do all these sorts of like creative kills
Mhm.
or whatever. And because this is PG-13, you cannot show the blood. Even when he cuts off the chick's hand, doesn't show it.
Nope.
It's a very bloodless movie. So I guess like another funny one. It was just like when a practical one where you don't think about is when he hits the zombie in the head with the crowbar, and then another zombie's coming at him. He's like trying to pry it from the skull of the first zombie, and I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, you wouldn't think about that, but like that probably would happen if you had a crowbar. So,
And
uh,
that's exactly the kind of zombie stuff we are looking for in these
right,
movies. So at
yeah,
least we got a breath of it, you know?
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
guns are too loud. I like that they again to avoid the just headshot every time. It's like that because they notice sound, you can't use the gun all
Nope.
the time. Last resort.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. They try to explain the reason why they're not doing certain things that I know were too expensive, and I approve of those explanations.
Right.
Yes. All right, cool. Yeah, give me some special features or behind the scenes stuff before we get out of here.
All right, yeah, we'll speed run through these. There's not that many actually. So,
Hmm.
but okay, at the time, I thought this was interesting. This was the highest grossing film of Brad Pitt's career, which,
Oh,
like, I guess, I kind of surprised me because you just think like he's such a movie star, but
yeah.
yeah, I don't know, did very well.
Okay.
uh, the Israeli military intelligence does have a devil's advocate office to explore worst case scenarios, which like they explain, but it's in the movie they call it the 10th man doctrine, but it's not called that in real life. So,
Okay, but it
but
exists in real life.
it's based on real life.
Let's
So
go.
I
Let's
thought that
go.
was interesting too, where it's like, so that's why, one person had to believe it was a zombie and investigate. And that's why. So it's again, trying to explain off the believability aspects in every way that they can.
I'll take it.
Uh, the director, Mark Forster, states that he prefers the extended unrated cut of the film, which I don't know if I've seen. The one I had, I have a digital copy of it. I'm pretty sure it was just the PG-13 version because there was no blood
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Same.
For him, it's just about the addition of blood and gore and the intensity compared to the PG-13. He says that although he's proud of the theatrical, he felt a bit handcuffed when trying to deliver the toned down version.
That
So,
makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, going from rated R to PG-13 is a really big leap. I know people probably think that it's a small one, but
Hmm.
it's actually like enormous, you
Yeah.
know?
Exactly.
It's
It makes
enormous.
a difference, and it's like watching a slasher, PG-13 slasher. I'm like, it automatically raises some red flags for me where I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, we're
we'll see.
mostly gonna be saying shit. There will be no blood. Like
For
a lot
example,
will be left.
recently Megan, which I did like,
I liked
but if
Megan too.
Megan was rated R, might have put it above a little bit more. Just
It would
saying.
have been pretty nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll get a sequel with Megan. I really actually
I think
do
they
hope
did
they make
greenlight a
one.
sequel, but
Okay,
I
good.
doubt it's
Good.
gonna be R because Blumhouse loves
Oh,
their PG-13
damn.
horror. But what I don't
It's
know.
true. I
We'll
mean,
see.
they do it well, so there's that.
Yeah. Last two here. Brad Pitt set up his involvement in the film. The whole thing started because I just wanted to do a film that my boys could see before they turn 18, one that they would like anyways, and they love a zombie movie.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm like, I guess he does do a lot of rated R movies, to be honest. Like,
That's
I
true.
kind of was
Yeah.
thinking about it. Like, maybe that does kind of track.
Yeah, because
Um,
I'm like, is he in any kids movies as like a voice actor? I don't.
Not
Oh,
really.
Megamind. He was in Megamind.
See, I don't think I've seen that.
It was
But
a long time ago.
yeah.
Um,
And then last one here, the rewrite. So this again, this is what we're talking about. Was almost 60 pages long, cost an additional $20 million more. In addition to the new opening and the rewritten third act, the following snippets were added by Drew Goddard, Damon Lindelof, and Christopher McQuarrie, doing
oh,
uncredited dialogue sharpening. So the
ooh,
family
let's go.
breakfast, the TV news report of the zombie sighting, Rachel's asthma attack, and then Jerry's phone call to Karen from South Korea to Jerusalem. So there you go.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oof, man. If only I could be a fly on the wall in some of these insane meetings and some of these
Yeah,
insane writer spaces. Like, it just, how movies get made at all is
it's a
a miracle
miracle. It's a
sometimes.
miracle. It
It
really is.
truly
I
is.
know. Like, when we talk, just seeing the new Transformers movie, and I'm just like, the fact that this became a franchise and it just started off as like a little boy's like toy
Dream.
line, like
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
this car turns into a robot, and then now there's like 8 movies or
It's
whatever.
amazing. It really
Miracle,
is.
miracle
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to see that soon and we are going to talk more, but I got to
Okay.
skedaddle, as you know. So take us
Yep.
home.
All right, so that wraps it up. Where can the people find you, Shani B?
So, all right. So you never miss a minute of the action. Please follow the show at Action Movie Buffs on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And me personally at It's Me, Shani B on all those platforms as well.
All right, yeah, and then subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, at Action Movie Buffs, and also YouTube, where we live stream, and then also re-upload the edited versions later. Make sure to give us a review, 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, please. Follow me on Twitter at rampage_misfit, and then all my movie pages are at misfit_minded. Thank you again for listening, guys. We'll catch you next time for another edition of Movie Buffs. Stay buff.